for people that want to take this idea and run with it, my recommendation is having a pitch that is creative and unique and to your story, and then definitely you want to mention the way that people can pay you as part of the pitch, in addition to having signage, mentioning it, reinforcing it again right before the show ended. Sometimes if a host was a close friend or someone that was a big supporter of the band, we would ask them if they were willing to get on the mic and really drive that point home, which helped a lot.
Oftentimes, if we checked all those boxes, our donation-based shows would be close and sometimes as profitable as our ticketed shows. Once we really figured out what all those key components were, these people were real fans. It's not like Spotify listeners where you're like, I don't know if this person actually knows who we are. At these shows we were playing, there on average be 30 people, and we'd get to talk to all of them and hang out with all of them.
We probably were played in front of 1,500 people, opening for a big act. You could play one venue show in front of that many people, but the amount of true fans that we came out of those 1,500, I think the percentage is very high.
What's going on? Welcome to the New Music Business. I'm your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, the book. Today, my guests are Teo and Tommy from the band More Fatter. More Fatter, they have this song, Weirdo, that was one of my quarantine standout songs. That was the one that I would be dancing around my apartment to with my fiance, and actually I set the time we were just dating, and yes, by the way, I'm engaged. And they had one of our standout quarantine songs. I've known these guys for a few years. They're actually Ari's Tech Academy alumni, and went through a couple of our programs and got agent representation and all that stuff. Anyway, the headline of this episode, which is extremely impressive, is that they did a house concert, or I guess I should say a backyard concert tour in the late summer of 2021, last summer. And 45 dates, they booked it themselves. Most of the cities they had never visited before. And they revealed they made around $50,000 from just in 2 months from these shows, which is incredibly impressive. I don't care who you are, for a band that does not have a massive online presence, has not visited these shows before, set this whole thing up by themselves, the first time they'd ever done it. Very, very impressive feat. And we talk about this entire episode on how they did it and their takeaways. So if you're thinking of ever doing a house concert show in any capacity, you're going to learn something from this. And so this episode is for you. And go check out their music while you're at it. Listen to the song Weirdo. That's a fun one. You can find More Fatter on all the socials. Just look them up. You can find all of us that make the show happen at Ari's Take on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You can find me at Ari Herstand on Instagram and Twitter. Please subscribe to this show. However you're listening to this right now, hit that subscribe or follow or like button. Leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you can. That would be super helpful. Those really, really help. And leave a comment on YouTube. If you're listening to this on YouTube, give us that up thumb. And I try to answer most of the comments there. I read the reviews, all that good stuff. Visit aristake.com and get on that email list. That is where we send all the most relevant, most important information. All right, let's kick into the show. Teo, Tommy, More Fatter, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Thanks for having us, Ari. Yeah.
The people that are just listening and not watching this, not watching the video, this is going to completely miss you, but I'm very curious. Are those like state swimming trophies that you have behind you, Teo, or what are we looking at here?
All kinds of trophies. We've got...
And medals? Man.
Oh, yeah.
You're such a champion.
I think this is the combination of all my siblings, including me. So we've got running, we've got some soccer, we've got some tennis.
Nice.
A lot of sports.
Wow.
A lot of victories.
Teo's brother, he doesn't, I always share this, so sorry. Teo's older sister was an Olympian in 2016. So
what?
The trophies are.
Yeah, I guess they're mostly her then.
Well, let's give her a shout. What is she Olympian for what?
She ran the 800 meters for France in Rio in the Brazilian Olympics.
Are you French?
In the Olympics that were in Brazil. Yeah, I was born in France.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, and what's her name? if we
Her
want
name
to
is
look her up.
Justine Fedronic.
All right, cool. So
She's a
we'll be staring
superstar.
at Justine's trophies and medals and awards through most of this. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice. So the headline, the reason that I'm so excited to talk to you guys today, and I think that you're going to help a lot of the listenership. Your 2-month backyard concert that you did around the States this summer. I was fortunate enough to catch one of the final shows in LA in actually a front yard or a porch. I guess it was a porch concert in Highland Park, and really cool. And I've done my fair share of house concerts and living room, backyard, that kind of stuff. But because the circumstances, and this is still this was summer 2021, last summer, and so there was still a lot of hesitancy of going indoors. So I guess step me through the process of how you set this thing up, how you booked it, when you went about it, and then just how it went.
Yeah, the starting with the process, we initially came up with the idea in I think it was 2020. Yeah, it was fall 2020. That was when we.
Oh yeah, you're right.
That's when we first kind of had the idea and wanted to make it happen at some point during the pandemic, and we started putting it into place a little bit actually that fall, and then
putting it into place meaning you started like trying out the backyard concert idea, or just sending out some feelers?
Mostly Tommy and I posted up at a cafe and just started tracing this awesome route around the US, and we were
that's the most fun part about it, right?
This can happen. But it was right around the time that COVID got especially bad that fall of 2020, so we just decided to scrap it. But yeah, that's when the kind of seeds were planted. I mean, it had been a while since we played music for people, and I think we had a couple tours canceled throughout the pandemic, like venue tours. And I think at that point we were just starting to think, okay, like once things calm down, how can we just start playing music again? Like that was a priority at that point.
And we did put out feelers that fall, I remember, and we were getting pretty positive responses from people. So at that point we were thinking, even though we put it on hold, we were like, okay, this is something that we can do in the future. And then that spring, in 2021, when COVID was calming down a bit, vaccines were starting to be available. That's when we were like, okay, we can go big with this. Because in the fall of 2020, we were originally just thinking like West Coast, or even just California.
Sure.
And kind of getting positive responses, and then in conjunction with COVID getting more under control, we were like, let's actually do it.
Yeah, I think it was in April. When all four of us had been vaccinated, and we, all that indoor time, it had just been brewing, and we were like, let's go big, let's go big. So I think in April we decided, let's try to do this. Our first step was we put together this roadmap and made a post saying we were looking for hosts in all these places. So we didn't have anything at that point. We just had a bunch of cities and a bunch of dates that we weren't set on, but that kind of placed it in time for people. I remember we didn't know if this was the right approach. I have we both have some mutual music friends who have planned house show tours by first reaching out and saying, is there anyone out there who wants to host a show? But we kind of flipped it. We were like, this is where we want to be July 5th. This is where we want to be July 20th. And I think that helped, people, it helped people go like, okay, well, this weekend of August. Yeah, I don't have anything else going on.
Yeah. And when we did that, that was a good way to have things structured. To be honest, we didn't actually get that many responses from that initial launch. So the next step that we took was really just tapping into our networks to try to lock in individuals for each specific date.
Yeah.
And what do you mean by that? You mean by like, hey, do the four of us know anybody in Houston? Do we know anyone in Philadelphia? Do we know anyone? And then like, oh yeah, my great aunt has a thing there, and you hit her up and be like, hey, do you want to host a thing in your backyard?
Yeah.
Like that kind of a thing, just
Totally.
going direct.
Exactly.
Just a big old spreadsheet of these are people we very loosely know. These are people we know well in each of these markets.
And that was like a 2-week process where we were accumulating like every contact that a member of our band had in each city. And we started reaching out to those people. And I'd say after about 2 weeks, because it was a 45 show tour all in all, see, after 2 weeks we started making headway and got to the point where we really thought it was realistic. Like after 2 weeks we had maybe 10 people confirmed?
Yeah. I would say at that point we were approaching the 50%. Maybe it's rosier in my mind.
So we're talking. This is what month are we talking? How far before the start of this tour?
So I would say, I mean, we started 2 months in advance. So this was what?
Maybe 2.5. We started in April.
Yeah,
and we left July 1st. So 2 to 3 months in advance.
2 to 3 months in advance, you had anywhere from 10 to 20 some shows booked, under half, let's just say less than half of the shows booked 2 months in advance. But what was the reach out like? Like, so when somebody said, hey, I'm free in Philly on this date, or I'm free or I would be down to host you, or you would hit them up and say, hey, we're looking to do this. What did you have anything? Did you have like a template email? Did you have what did you pitch them? How did you explain to them how this was going to work?
Yeah, to be honest, that was the biggest challenge. Like it was it felt like a big education challenge. We had so many people kind of push back, and good friends who were just out of them trying to be extra helpful. They'd be like, no. Like, I could try to get you guys into a bar, or I could try to get you guys into this venue, and we kept trying to like that. The biggest challenge was kind of, just like convincing people that this is actually what we wanted. And like, I think people were, so we did have a template, but because a lot of this, at least at the start, a lot of it was people we were close to. There's a lot of just personalized messages, a lot of phone calls, honestly.
It was really helpful to get people on the phone. Like having an initial message that would make clear like what we wanted, and then a follow-up phone call to really explain. Because at this point, a lot of people, like Teo said, didn't really understand what we were going for from the message.
And what did you explain to? I mean, how much of the details were you revealing on this initial one? Did you lay everything out saying, okay, we're charging for this. It's going to be this amount. This is how it's going to work. We want to do this time frame. This is what we need from you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or was it just like, hey, do you have space? We'll cover the details later if you say yes, or something like that.
We tried to pretty much put everything out up front. At least that's what I would say. Like,
and what were those details that you were putting out?
The details being, it's going to be a house show in your backyard. We're looking to get between 30, 40 people. We'd be charging for tickets. And we need access to a bathroom. Like these, honestly, one of the things that helped us a lot with this was actually our booking agent, Dan Boyle, helped us kind of come up with this structure of questions that, you know, from a booking agent are kind of just automatic, like very good logistics questions to take care of. And so that kind of gave us a template to follow. What we found was hitting, you know, these friends or loose acquaintances with this long list wasn't the best way. So we tried just starting by saying, hey, like, we're looking to play a show in a backyard. And then these are some things on top of that would help make this happen.
For clarity, your booking agent did not book this, though. You booked it, right?
No.
Okay.
No, we ended up doing it.
So this booking agent is primarily for what, clubs and festivals, or for performing arts centers, colleges?
Yeah, clubs and festivals. He's our booking agent for venue shows and festivals.
Got it. Okay, cool. So, well, I want to know how you set these up more specifically. You said you're going to charge tickets. What did that mean? Did you have a set rate? Now, when you say we were going to 30 to 40 people, is that we're expecting you to bring the crowd, or did you ask them to make these public and you guys were promoting them and going to bring in a crowd? How did this all work?
So yeah, this was one of the areas where we started with a plan. Our initial plan was we wanted to sell tickets at every show, $30,
okay. $30,
45 cities. So when we had the locations locked in, we launched ticket sales. And
on what? How?
On Eventbrite.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we set up an account on Eventbrite. We created all the events and the links on Eventbrite, which is a little, I mean, it's not difficult. It takes time for sure, but it's relatively easy to do.
Sure.
And you can just put whatever ticket price you want to put in there. You can put a description. You can put a nice picture. So it gives people, and that's just like the medium that people are used to using when they buy concert tickets. So
sure.
We had a good experience with it overall.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so unfortunately, after we had launched the tickets, we weren't selling tickets in quite a good amount of the cities.
Sure.
I mean, we're a West Coast band. We had toured the West Coast before, and we played a lot in California, but a lot of these cities we hadn't played in.
It was definitely ambitious of us, but I think starting kind of with that structure and just being flexible was probably a solid approach in the long run, because for the markets where, as we approached a show, when it would be in a market where we weren't selling at all, that's when we would switch to a free show donation-based model. And what we would do there is we'd reach out to the host and we'd say, hey, we were originally going to make this ticketed. We don't know too many people out there. We're not selling many tickets. So we're going to change it to a free show. Invite all your friends, all your family. Let's pack it. Let's make it a party. And then that ended up being honestly close to on par with our ticketed shows.
In terms of attendance.
In terms of attendance.
And sometimes in terms of financials.
Yeah, depending on how good that donation pitch was, which I think Tommy's the guy to go into that.
Yeah.
So wait, I want to get into the donation pitch. I want to get into the financials of all of this and the attendance numbers and all of that. So step me through that process. So this was, you pitched to the hosts, this is going to be a public show. We're going to promote it. And so every host was theoretically okay with strangers coming to this concert in their backyard. Is that right?
Yeah, well,
almost.
When we first kind of like sold the hosts or talked to them about having the show, the agreement was that it was going to be ticket buyers. And then when we came back to them and said that, hey, we're not going to sell tickets, we want it to be a free show, we really put them in like a position of power and being the person that would drive the crowd. Okay. So, I mean, we were still making it a public show technically, but for the most part, it was just the host community of people that would be there. So it was kind of like a party that most people were really excited about because, I mean, these people that we connected with, they're big fans of live music, and it was almost an opportunity for them to have like a party in their space with a cool band for free.
Yeah, I'd say one of the key things there is we would never make it a free show weeks in advance. And, like put it on our story saying, hey, free show here. And I think that was a big part of, keeping the host in the position of power. It would be the day of, and we'd really we weren't spreading the word about a free show happening at this spot. We would post it usually on our story the day of, saying the show here is free.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you had all of these shows on Eventbrite ticketed $30 and you only flipped it and told the host, hey, this is a free show. Tell everybody the day of or the day before or so, or?
No. So we would tell the host a little bit more in advance. Usually we just would hold off on publicizing the show as a free show on our social medias.
Gotcha.
Like accounts.
Okay.
Yeah, like mainly it was the point of it was we wanted to give the host enough time to invite all of their friends, but we didn't want to make it a publicized thing so that the host would feel overwhelmed with like random people coming to the show.
Right.
But the way that we ensured that it would be worth it for us is when we were asking the host if they were okay with the free model. We asked them like, hey, like realistically, how many people do you think you can have at the show?
Yep.
And if they said at least 20, or a lot of people would say more, 30. A lot of people were saying, oh yeah, for a $30 show, none of my friends want to come. But free, I can get 40 of my friends to come.
Yeah.
Okay, so then oh yeah, go for it.
Well, just the last thing I want to say is a lot on this point is it really was case by case, and it would really depend on the host. So the biggest thing about making this tour work was really working with the individual hosts, like in a personalized way, and like kind of avoiding just firing off templates.
Yeah.
Because there were some hosts who were like, I don't care who's at my house. Let's have some music. Let's have a good time. And so we would adjust to that, and we'd, be more public about, hey, get over to this show. And there were some hosts, there were a few shows on the tour that were totally private. And that's because we would always hope to get hosts that were okay with opening their place up. But there were a couple markets. Sometimes it was a really good friend who'd be like, hey, I'm really not comfortable having people I don't know, but I will get 30 people to this show. Cool. And so that happened a couple times. And in that case, we worked with them and we said, all right, cool. That sounds good.
And then how did the finances work for these free shows or for the private shows? You were about to talk about your donation pitch. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, for the free shows, the model was, it got better over time because the first several shows were all ticketed, and then I think the very first show that was free was in Salt Lake City, and basically our strategy there was we started playing the show, and then in the middle of the set I gave a story about who we were, what we were doing, and essentially just communicated to people that we're doing a full nationwide tour. The show tonight's free. That being said, like if you're comfortable pitching in to help us out as we go on this nationwide journey, we'd really appreciate it. We've got a suggested donation of X, but whatever amount you feel comfortable with is super appreciated.
And what was X? $30?
So it started at 20.
Okay.
And then
it would adjust.
It eventually became 30 at the end because we felt that we had 30. I mean, we were experimenting with 20 versus 30 to see how people reacted, or like to see if people were receptive to having it be more. And they generally were, I'd say, like, because we weren't saying, you have to pay us $30. We were saying, suggested 30, but whatever you're comfortable with is really
And
cool.
how did you, were you passing a hat around or taking Venmo, or what were you doing?
Yeah, we had a sign that we made. Did you make the sign? Who made the sign?
Man, our sign situation was a nightmare. Signs don't do well in minivans stuffed with 4 dudes and a lot of gear. Our signs would get just split in half. They'd get wrinkled. They'd get left on top of the car and probably just ejected at some point. But we made a lot of different cardboard signs that just had our Venmo handle. We had some nicer signage. This is another shout out to my sister. Wait, was that the sign we used? My sister makes like these laser cut wooden cool art things, and at some point she made a merch sign for us, which was awesome.
Hell yeah.
What did we use we used a chalkboard actually for our merch signage.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of times we had a big sign that we would hang up that was visible. And then in addition to that, at our merch table, we had a chalkboard. So I think the key to really capitalizing on the donations was making the pitch in the middle of the show and making it be very, like, definitely emphasizing the importance of the fact that we needed like help to complete the tour.
Yeah, I would say beyond that, not more like tying it to a story. Like once our pitch got really good, it's because Tommy started talking about our touring vehicle, which we lovingly named Big Booty Bertha, and Tommy would talk about how Bertha had been taking us on this adventure as she was, and
not just for this tour, but like it had been a big part of our band.
And
Yeah.
what was your touring vehicle? What was Big Booty Bertha? What
a
is she?
2005 Toyota Sienna. And she is
Fantastic.
still flying, doing so good. Just
Amazing.
the best.
Yeah, but that's a good point too. It wasn't just like saying that we'd appreciate donations. It was making the story personal, giving people kind of an emotional tie.
Yeah.
To
At
it.
some point, Tommy would say something like, your donation helps keep the wheels on Big Booty Bertha turning, and it helps us on this adventure. And like, I think that was something that people who had enjoyed the show could really buy into. They're like, all right, keep bringing this show on the road. So
some sort of like for people that want to take this idea and run with it, my recommendation is having a pitch that is creative and unique and to your story, and then definitely you want to mention the way that people can pay you as part of the pitch, in addition to having signage.
Yeah.
And then the last component of it was mentioning it, reinforcing it again right before the show ended. Like that's what that helped us a lot. And one other thing, like most of the time we would do it right before the show would end. We would remind people, but additionally, we sometimes if a host was a close friend or someone that was a big supporter of the band, we would ask them if they were willing to, at the end of the show, get on the mic and really drive that point home, which helped a lot.
Yeah, but I'd say when we checked all those boxes, our donation-based shows, and this would depend on the market, but oftentimes if we checked all those boxes, our donation-based shows would be close and sometimes as profitable as our ticketed shows, which was, it was super awesome once we really figured out what all those key components were. And then of course, when we had a host who was, sometimes we'd have super enthusiastic hosts who'd be like, no, I'm going to say something. And when they'd get on the mic, that was always the best because it would be a lot of their friends or people they knew in their community. And that would always be like a kind of a boost.
That's huge. So, and I was going to ask you, since you were able to A/B test this with ticketed shows versus the free donation-based shows, which one performed better? And you're saying once you dialed in the pitch, and the pitch is so important, and you had, so were you taking all digital payments, all Venmo, or did you take cash as well?
We took cash too.
It was cash,
mainly
and Venmo.
digital though. Yeah, cash, Venmo, and Cash App.
Cool. Okay, gotcha. Well, that's great, and it almost equaled out the ticketed shows. And I think I've heard that. I mean, I've experimented with this as well, and I've talked to a lot of people that have done the house concert thing. Some people swear by the donation model. Some people swear by the model where you don't even say what the suggested donation is. It's just like whatever you, almost like at the end of the show, they say whatever you thought this was worth. You give it, you give it to us, and you'll help us get to the next thing. And then that's when you have some people send in 100.
Yeah, I remember you were telling us about that.
I never did that. When I was doing my things, I similarly did the suggested donation thing because I was afraid about that too. I was just like, well, then that means people are going to give me $2. I was like, fuck, and then I'm going to feel like shit that my show is only worth $2. But But that's interesting. So let's talk about merch now. When you're saying you're doing these, you got these pitches down. I'm assuming that when you're doing the donation pitch, you're also doing the merch pitch. Was that baked in, or was that separate?
Yeah, the merch thing was something that we probably botched more often.
Definitely not more often than not, but more often than the donation pitch.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
So tell me about the merch.
And
how did the merch
by
go?
botched, it would usually be botched because I would do it. Tommy's the much better one.
No, I think you did a good job most of the time. I do think it was key, though, to keep those two things separate.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because
okay.
That's something that we learned early on. Because when we tied them in together, then people would assume that if they bought merch, that was like their suggested donation.
Ah, got it. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And the thing with that, especially that we found was our probably worst margin merch item, and it's mostly just because of how we ended up designing it, and we just used too many colors. We did it in a rush. Ended up being our T-shirt, and people ended up being definitely the most loved item. People were really buying it.
I'm afraid to ask, but what was your baseline cost?
Oh my gosh, Ari,
T-shirt?
I don't even want to tell you, man. it was tough. I mean, Tommy, what, like 20?
I think it was
20. Ooh.
Yeah. Let's not talk about it.
$21 for it to cost.
I know. Listen, we've done this so much better in the past. We don't want to talk about it.
Ooh.
It's a fly shirt.
You might have, at that point, you could have gone to Urban Outfitters, just bought a $20 shirt and written more fatter on the top and sold it.
It was the single coolest piece of merch we've ever sold, I think, in terms of design.
Okay. I mean, you got to get those costs down. Why was it so expensive? That's crazy. I've never heard of a T-shirt at cost that expensive.
Just poor planning, last minute design decisions, being too attached to the design and not really having the time and bandwidth to change it.
How many colors?
It was like 4 or 5 on the front and then 4 or 5 on the back.
Oh, you did a backside too.
And because of that, it didn't make sense to do screen printing. And so we did that direct to DTP. It's DT. Yeah, it's like, instead of screen printing, it's just like it's totally based on it's not based on the colors you use, but it's based on the amount of ink used. Okay. I don't know much about the process, but it's a different process.
Well, better question is, what did you sell them for?
Well, we started selling them at 30.
Okay.
And eventually we bumped it to 40 because...
Oh, and you sold them at 40?
Yeah, we sold all of them. We sold out of them.
Well, then it doesn't matter that it cost you $21. Right. If you made a $20 profit on your shirts, I mean, that's better than most people make on their shirts.
Sam and I were arguing about this.
Tommy and I this was our only source of beef along the tour, because to me it felt real bad selling a shirt for 40. But no, Tommy was right. I mean, and we played around, like we would sell it at 35 sometimes. We try selling it at 40 and see, how people valued it and how much they would want it.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the design being complex, it was also a premium quality shirt.
Sure.
I just felt like it was
definitely
something that people were willing to pay 40.
I mean, when was the last time you went to a big concert at the Bowl or the Greek or wherever? Where have you looked at their merch table, their merch booth? We're talking $85 shirts. We're talking T-shirts. Like that's what they're charging. Granted, they're the superstars, but yes, it's premium quality. But still, people are used to the premium content, premium merch at concerts. And especially, you're the only game in town, right? At this point, like, how many concerts had people been to and buying the merch? Like this, you're probably the first concert they experienced in a year and a half.
Yeah, we got that a lot.
And honestly, that's what was so special about this tour, is it felt like, for a lot of people, it was their reintroduction to society. And we were like creating this really safe and like kind of transitional step back into things, because it was, the vibes that are at these shows was relaxed, and it was a backyard, and people would just be like mingling, and people would feel really comfortable outside. So I think that's probably one of the things that was most special.
I mean, it's huge. Yeah, that's right. That's the other thing. And like, I'm sure you realize this, is that people were having pretty like magical, like spiritual experiences at these things that they just like, none of us had any kind of an experience like that. For the last year and a half, people are coming out of quarantine and you're giving them this experience. So it's almost like they're not just buying a shirt, they're buying a memory. And they want to remember that, and like $40 is totally fine for that. What other merch items did you have?
So one of the things that was Gustav's, our bass player's pride and joy, was these temporary tattoos, which we had, which was a first for us.
Nice.
Goose really drove that forward to make it happen. But yeah, we had 2 different designs. These tattoos lasted. We hoped they would, we tried getting ones that would last 1 to 2 weeks. In practice, unfortunately, they were more like a couple days. But those were fun little things that sometimes people would buy 5 or 10 of. So it was like a cool item.
Cool.
We would, bundle it. We'd give a good discounted price if people bought 5 at a time or 10 at a time.
And where did you find these? Where did you get these from? How'd you order them?
Yeah, that was a bit of a process. Goose did a lot of research. Man, I don't have the name off the top of my head of the company.
That's all right. What did you sell them for?
Going with, what did we sell?
We sold them for $5.
Yeah,
each.
1 for $5.
1 for $5,
cool.
and then we did 5 for $20.
Yeah, 5 for $20.
Amazing, cool.
And we sold hats. We've had the same hat design for a long time. They've been super popular. So we sold those for $30. And then we had a couple other things. We had a sticker sheet.
Oh yeah, that was a fun one. Basically, we have this bumper sticker design that's been a design we've had for a really long time, and people really like it. But their unit price is not great at all. And we used to just give them out, and we were like, we got to stop doing this. So we put it on a sticker sheet with a bunch of other really cool sticker designs, and that way we sold the whole sheet. How much did we sell for?
Those were 10.
The sticker sheet was 10.
Cool.
But it was like 6 or 7 different stickers, and it was like a big old page.
And the last thing was CDs. That we sold.
That's what I was waiting for, because tell me about your CD story. What do you mean by CDs? How you sold CDs? We're not talking digipacks here or plastic shrink wrapped CDs. Tell the listeners how you sold your CDs.
Okay, I'm gonna tell the backstory. So right before this tour, we'd been really working on finishing up our album, and we didn't end up finishing it all, but we ended up pretty much recording most of it and getting pretty far along in the production. And then I think a couple of days before we left, I put on our story. We were all super excited about the music, and I put on our story something like, "Hey, does anyone still buy CDs? We've got a bunch of like almost done songs. Who wants to listen to them?" And we got like 100 people saying, "I want one, I want one, I want one." We were like, "All right, that's enough." So I drove to Target and bought 100-pack of blank CDs for
They still sell those?
Yeah, they do, for like $20, or maybe it was less, maybe $10.
Wow.
And this is where the poor planning really kicked in, because we could have just burned all those CDs before we left on tour, but no, instead we brought all these blank CDs, and pretty much before every show, Anthony would be burning a couple CDs with love, and we'd be like, "Hey, did we burn any?" And he'd be like, "Oh no, we don't have any CDs today." But yeah, the idea there was we'd burn the CD, we'd all sign it, we'd all write, unreleased album, we'd draw little pictures on it. We'd all have different color Sharpies and put it in a little cardboard sleeve. And yeah.
They were popular.
They were popular.
Sold a lot of those.
People loved it. We sold the whole 100 set by the end
How much did you sell them for?
Sold those for 20.
Yeah.
$20.
Woo! See, this is the thing. Like, when was the last time, I don't know if you guys ever bought CDs, but I'm old enough where I remember going to, Best Buy and Sam Goody and shit and buying CDs. And it was like, CDs they don't cost $20. They never really cost $20. At the peak in the late 90s, they were like, I remember going and buying the Jack Johnson CD from Best Buy, and I bought it for like $18. I'm like, I cannot believe that this costs 18. Yeah. That's insane. And then I got home and it was just a cardboard sleeve and there was no liner notes or anything, and I was livid. I'm like, come on, Jack. But then, he's an environmentalist, so he's just like, I just wanted the lowest environmental impact what he was doing, which in the late 90s, props to him, or early 2000s or whenever this was.
Seriously.
This was probably 2002 or 3. Right. It was like, he's like, yeah, no environmental impact, or low environmental. But anyway, that's incredible. I've never sold. Most CDs, the going rate is typically you're $10 at the merch table, but you sold a burned CD $20. Again, they're not buying the plastic. They're buying a memory. They're buying a souvenir.
And the fact that it was our new album that was unreleased, it wasn't even fully done. It was even just like it was a very unique item for a fan to have. In addition to just like being a CD.
I think the single biggest thing there is and we made this clear when we would mention it, is these songs, you can't listen to them on the internet. And
you
still can't. And honestly, probably we'll only be able to in maybe 3-4 months if we keep getting after it.
Cool.
So yeah, it was the idea that I'm at this show, I'm hearing these songs, they might get stuck in my head. I can't listen to them for another 6 months to a year. Oh wait, maybe I can if I have a CD player.
Cool.
And so I think people were really into that.
That's amazing. How did you burn them?
It's on Anthony's computer. He has a really old computer.
Yeah.
He still has a CD.
Oh shit.
We would just put them in, and we had the tracks.
Wow.
Drag them into the CD, and just burn away.
That would honestly be the only moment. I mean, one of the few moments of drama on tour would just be like pre-show, like, can we burn enough CDs? Sometimes we'd get smart and burn enough for the next 3 or 4 shows, and then next thing we know,
depending on how much time we had.
Yeah. So okay, when you left for your first show, or I guess the day of your first show, and that was local. Was that at LA? Your first show was LA?
July 1st in LA.
July 1st. How many shows still needed to be booked?
It's a good question. I'd say
what percentage of the tour was booked, or how?
I'd throw out the number that out of the 45 shows we played, maybe like 15 of them had not been booked.
I mean,
max.
Yeah, I'd say 10 to 15. We had contacts.
Yeah.
In probably, I'd say in the majority of those, but they weren't fully confirmed. And then I think there were like 5 that we were just like completely had nothing.
We have a couple fun day before or 3 days before stories.
Hit me.
I would say Columbus was probably the craziest. So we're playing this show in Cleveland. The next night we were supposed to be playing in Columbus. We didn't know a single person in Columbus. So I think last minute decision in the middle of our set in Cleveland, I think I go like, hey, if anyone knows anyone in Columbus, we were hoping to play a show there tomorrow night, but we don't know anyone there. So come talk to us after the show. Maybe we could figure something out. And we had 3 people come up to us, and ultimately we ended up going with someone who was at the Cleveland show, had a cousin in Columbus. We'd never talked to him. We'd never met him. We called them that night. They were like, yeah, let's do it. And we were there like 12 hours later.
They brought 20 friends. So it ended up.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Incredible. Amazing. Yeah. Wow. All right.
That one was dicey. The other one that was especially dicey was Bend, Oregon.
Oh my gosh.
So the story on that one was
crazy.
Yeah, we didn't have a host. And a Cliff Bar official Instagram post. I think you commented. Teo commented on a Cliff Bar Instagram post. What did you say on that?
Okay, no, it's especially crazy because this is a classic like Instagram algorithm creepy thing story, because we'd been on a drive and we passed through this town, maybe called White Falls, or I don't even know the name of the town, but then suddenly magically a post pops up on my feed that's a Cliff Bar post talking about how they're founded in that town, that random town we passed. Yeah, I didn't know that. And so clearly it knew that I was passing through, and it's like, here, you'll like this. And we do love Cliff Bars. Tommy is a massive fan, and his big dream is to one day get a sponsorship. But I commented, no way, we just passed through and we love Cliff Bars. Like, hello, I just did a little wave to the Cliff Bar Instagram account, and this awesome guy in Bend, radio host in Bend named JMO, happened to see that comment, clicked on our page, looked us up, looked our music up, and just DM'd me. or DM'd our band account. And then I called him that morning, and this all happened in a span of a couple hours. Right?
Yeah, this was the day of the show.
This
we
was
were
the
planning
day of
to
the
cancel
show.
the show.
It was going to be the first show that
we
had
the end of the tour.
We had a
This was
perfect
show, like,
record.
37.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. You were driving to Bend, Oregon
Yes.
without a show booked.
Yes.
Just putting it into the universe. We're going to play tonight somehow, somewhere.
Yeah, well, I think on our story it was kind of like still looking for a Bend host, haven't found one, and that was the status. You know,
Wow,
we had shows booked in Portland and Eugene, but Bend was just evading us.
Okay.
So Teo gets on the phone with JMO,
Mm-hmm.
and JMO happens to he's relatively high up at a radio station.
He runs his
he
show.
has his own show, and he has contacts in Bend. So basically, he has us on the radio show for an interview, and in addition to that, he connected us at a venue called
Spoken Moto, which is a really cool like motorcycle bar outdoor space.
Yeah, it's an outdoor space. So we ended up playing. That was the only venue that we technically like. This was a show that it wasn't one of the like typical formats where we played in someone's backyard. We played at this place, and we still did the donation pitch, and it ended up being a great show. We played for 20 people that night.
Nice.
And then we also found someone there who that was one of our best shows actually at the tour. Like we were just really, I think we were just so stoked that we found a show that we just really
we were locked in.
And we found a host that wanted to have us play a second Bend show on like our day off on the way back down. And she was able to bring 30 friends to that next show. So we ended up
we
playing
love
Bend
Bend
twice.
We love Bend.
50 people. Yeah, and you couldn't believe that happened. It's a crazy turn of events.
That's amazing.
We ended up driving directly to JMO's radio station where he worked and just walked straight into, got on mics and then did a radio show where he just talked through some of our songs and asked us questions, and then we went straight to the venue.
That's amazing. That's fun. That's cool. So any other close calls or anything like that, or catastrophes, or step me through any empty shows, any shows where there was like just like the host and their cat?
Yes, exactly.
Really?
We had one that just jumps to my mind when you say a host and a cat. It wasn't a cat, it was a dog. But again, this was another place that we couldn't find anyone in. It was Atlanta. And another weird, funny, crazy story, because we didn't have a show. We were about 5 days out, and I was getting a haircut in Austin, and I was just chatting with this guy cutting my hair. And he was on his own like hair cutting tour. So we kind of bonded over that, because he lived in he would like go to Boulder for a week to cut hair. Then he would we were kind of following the same route. He was just going slower and cutting hair instead of playing music. But he's like, hey, I know some guys who opened up a barber shop in Atlanta. I'm going to actually be there cutting hair in a couple months. You guys should hit them up, and I'm sure they'd love to host a show. And so we did that. It was, I think maybe we only had 2 other shows that ended up being indoors, but that was one of those.
Yeah.
And yeah, we found ourselves in the middle of this like pretty hip barbershop.
Great acoustics.
With no one there. No one.
No one there.
Two people plus like 3 barbers.
It was
worked there.
Yeah, it was a couple barbers, one of their girlfriends, a dog, and 2 people who had heard one of our songs on their Spotify Discover Weekly 2 days before, and were like, cool, and showed up. And it was so funny because,
that's amazing.
I mean, honestly, it's probably the show I was the most nervous for, because it was just like,
it's very intimate.
It was so intimate. It was so intimate.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was a wild experience.
Okay.
It felt like we were just playing music for like our parents almost.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, it was wild. I don't know how else to
Shout
say
out to Discover Weekly.
Yeah.
That enabled the audience to outnumber you for that one.
Seriously, just barely.
So, what did you do for sleeping situations on this tour?
Yeah, that's a good question. We got very pretty scrappy with our like lodging.
Very scrappy and very fortunate,
Yeah,
honestly.
and super fortunate. I mean, because you asked earlier about the questions that we would ask people.
Yeah.
When we were initially talking to them about the idea. One of the questions two of the questions that we asked, which I think would be helpful for people, were our booking agent recommended these, but one of them was, are you willing to provide dinner for the band night of the show, and then are you willing to host the band after the show? And generally people were favorable to letting us crash. More people were okay with having us crash than cooking us dinner, which was totally fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because out of 63 days, we were on tour for 63 days. I think we only paid for 7. I think we paid for 7 nights of hotels.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every other night, it was either the hosts that were willing to have us crash, or when that wasn't the case, like we really used our networks in those cities to try to find friends that were, able to help us out, or friends of friends.
Huge.
A couple cities where like we found people that were willing to host us at the show, but most of the time it was planned in advance.
Yeah, a lot of nights on like couches and blow up mattresses and sometimes the ground, but I would say that was probably the biggest pleasant surprise of the tour is like how fortunate we got with our sleeping situations. Like people were so gracious with their spaces. In fact, in Nashville, we were staying with 4 guys who just like moved out while we were there. Like they all went to their parents, their girlfriends, and just left us this house.
That's
and
amazing.
There were so many examples of just like, oh my gosh, like this is too much. We even, like we had a couple situations where we had people actually put us up in a hotel. They're like, I can't host you, but take this, like
it
was ridiculously like,
cool.
We were super fortunate.
There's so many cool people that we met. Yeah, really super generous.
So cool. So what would you say, I want to get into the numbers here because that's also something very impressive and that a lot of people don't realize. What were the take home? Tell me the numbers. What was your gross revenue from this? Your take home, all of that. How did it all work out in the end?
Yeah, we didn't want to go like too specific into the numbers. Like one thing we'll say is that we've toured in the past. And it had been difficult for us to I think on our previous tours, we've always done a good job of like breaking even.
Right.
And making a little bit of money.
Okay.
But this tour, it was the first time where we were ever able to go on tour and like pay ourselves afterwards for the time and work that we put into. Pay ourselves like an amount that felt representative of the effort and time that went into it, which was like amazing for us.
Yeah, I mean, it was
a big accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean I think that was the biggest thing is like, for those 2 months we didn't have to worry about like paying rent and all our food was covered. But this was also the first time where we were like, okay, we just dedicated 2 months of our lives and more during the planning stages to this thing. And we managed to all, everyone took home a slice of the pie. And then we also ended up having now having this budget, the amount that we saved to, as you're well aware, recording, mixing, mastering music is very expensive. It can be. And so like having a budget to finish our album was just like incredible.
For sure.
Cool.
I'll talk about revenue a little bit because I think that's important for people to hear. Like with the structure that we had it, which was $30 like per ticket, and then where we didn't sell tickets, we had the donation pitches. Like our total revenue with tickets plus merch was around $50,000. And then
that's incredible. In 45 shows.
45 shows, yeah.
Wow.
And then a lot of like the profits just came down to how much, we spent on food and lodging
And gas,
gas.
a lot of gas.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of
Unfortunately,
gas,
one day doing one of these tours in an electric car would be pretty nice.
yeah, I mean, the gas
It is
situation
very
was
nice.
honestly also really fortunate because we were able to take the Sienna minivan, which got 23
Yeah. So
miles to the gallon.
one of the simple pleasures of tour was
Is that
all sitting
good?
in the car watching the miles per gallon meter, and every time it would tick up 0.1 miles per gallon more, we would just be like, yeah, we would just be like fist pumping and celebrating. And by the end of it, we were, so much all that highway driving really helps out your mileage. So we crept up to 23, and we were quite proud of that because in LA, that car gets like 19.
Oh yeah. That makes sense. I mean, that's a feat, and you should be tremendously proud of that. I mean, that $50,000 in 2 months of any kind of touring. I mean, that's phenomenal, especially at this. How many of the cities had you been to before?
Not many.
Out of the
7.
Out of like the 40 we went to, or maybe like, how many cities did we go to? 38. Yeah, we'd probably played music in like 8 of them.
Yeah, San Francisco, LA, Portland, Seattle, New York,
Santa Barbara,
Reno,
San Diego.
and San Diego.
8.
Yeah, 8.
So the vast majority of these shows is your first time through. Now, when you chose these cities, was there a reason that you chose these cities? Were you looking at your Spotify analytics or your Instagram analytics, or how did you choose these cities?
Well, we knew we've toured and we've established, at least decent fan bases in the West Coast major cities like Seattle and San Diego. So we knew we wanted to do those for sure. And then New York is actually one of our biggest market, probably our second biggest market after the Bay Area. That's where our band's from. So we really knew we wanted to get out there.
Yeah.
And I've spent a good amount of time in Texas, so I have a bunch of friends there. Really wanted to get to the major Texas cities.
Cool.
So at that point, we were just kind of like, we should do what we can to fill it in.
There were points in the planning of this tour where it was looking like we were really starting to question whether we'd make it to the East Coast because like we were really struggling to fill some of those connecting cities. And I think I wouldn't say we got super close, but we got close to kind of calling it and just sticking to the West Coast. So I think a lot of our drive was like, we got to get to New York and play some shows. We'd played actually just one really awesome show in New York before then. But we just knew we wanted to get out there. So yeah, a lot of it was just finding a way to get out there, and a big factor in which cities we hit was whether we'd be able to find hosts. So like keeping the tour schedule, or at least the initial route, not too rigid. That was probably the biggest challenge, is like keeping it rigid enough to lock people in, but not having it be too rigid so that we couldn't, bail on a city and instead put another city in there.
Got it.
It was kind of a delicate balance.
Yeah. But we definitely did have a conversation. Like I remember at one point before the tour, I was like, I don't think this makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember telling you that.
Yeah, I was heartbroken.
I was like, I'm looking at it, and all these cities, we don't know anybody. How are we gonna play to anybody? We're gonna have more than half the shows where we're playing to nobody.
Yeah,
we're losing money. I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, eventually, Teo convinced me that.
I see the optimist, the pessimist here. This is right.
Absolutely.
The yin and the yang. Okay.
Yeah.
And it just all worked out so magically, which wasn't expected. It definitely wasn't expected to be able to play to as many people as we did each night, but also just like the financial part of it really came together magically. And we were just super fortunate with the lodging, people being so generous.
Yeah.
Also, we didn't have any car breakdown. We didn't have any car break-in.
Yeah, I'd say that was a big part of the finances. Is we kind of like built in, or it was like I guess we were expecting for more to go wrong. We kind of built in a cushion because we were expecting, there'd be some car maintenance costs that we'd have to deal with. And we did get oil changes, but apart from that, We didn't have any problems. We were expecting, maybe a break-in happens. That happens all the time with musicians. You have your gear in the car. That's a tough thing to, like, the way we dealt with it is just like a lot of unloading and loading.
Yeah.
Like, we'd really make sure to not have stuff in our car.
Something I recommend.
Something that Tommy and Goose are especially.
Don't get lazy. Even if you're tired at the end of the night,
Yeah.
you want to keep it in the car.
What I used to do when I toured in an SUV in a Highlander, I would cover all the gear with a big king size sheet. So if someone was like peering in, they're like, oh, there's nothing in here. It's just a bunch of junk or whatever. And I would, like, just a big king size sheet. Now, granted, I would take my instruments out, but like the rest of the stuff in there, I would just cover it up. And knock on wood, fortunately, I never had a break in the hundreds and hundreds of shows that I did in that thing. But so what would you say for artists who are thinking of embarking on a house concert tour? What is your advice to them? What were some big takeaways after this, the post-mortem, when you're looking back and it's like, man, these are the biggest lessons that we learned, and to save everyone the stress of having to go through and learning this themselves, what are some takeaways that you'd like to offer?
I have a couple in mind. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, you get started.
One thing that I think is really important is the sound, because for these shows, they're not venue shows, right? There's no sound guy or sound person. There's no, there's no one running a mix for you, and even there's no equipment for you in most cases. In all cases for us. So we bought from Guitar Center. We bought a small PA. We bought a couple speakers, and we set up the audio at each show. And
nice.
I mean, at first it kind of was a bit of a process, but then we really got it down, and we're able to set things up in like less than half an hour and do a quick sound check and have it all dialed in. So I think that's really important, regardless of what kind of act you are. Like, making sure that you bring the audio with you so you can do it yourself, but then B, also making sure that you tailor it to this kind of audience, because our band, for the most part, the shows that we had played in the past were venue shows where we're plugged in. We've got a drum kit, we've got guitar, but we had played acoustic shows here, like sporadically here and there, and we've always loved doing that. So our music like translates relatively well to an acoustic setting, but we definitely worked on it. Like, we really worked on our set and made sure that the sound was going to be like a good fit for people in the kind of house show. So that's something that I think is really important to think through.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of rearranged a lot of our songs to really make them sound the best and acoustic, in that form. Just threw in a ton of harmonies and some,
Cool.
Another thing that you should talk about, Tab, because you know more about it, is just like the lighting is important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the shows were after dark.
Yes. And I'd say that's something we definitely could have done better on. Usually the lighting is the last thing we would kind of get to, and for that reason, it's the thing that we wouldn't do at a lot of shows. But yeah, we'd end up playing. It would be dark by the time we'd be halfway through our set, and so the shows where we had string lights set up, sometimes it'd be as easy as just like draping a set of string lights in front of us. It would always be better if we got some string lights above us as well. It made a huge difference, and I'd say probably the reason, the thing that it was the best for is after the show. When we'd end a show and it'd be dark and no one could see us, it'd kind of be like, all right, the night's over. Like, it would just be like, time to get out of here.
You don't connect with fans as well, and it hurts your merch sales.
Yeah. That's probably the way in which we'd actually hurt our donations and our merch the most. And it's something we didn't really figure out until near the end. Thinking about the lighting and how the end of the show will look, is definitely a good tip.
Also, like, kind of building off these two things is the seating component. That's something that was important that we didn't fully, like, I mean, we were good at figuring it out on the fly. But going into it, I don't think we had really thought about it. And our strategy was, because you can't really carry seating in your touring band for everybody.
Sure.
So
Not if it's a Toyota Sienna.
yeah.
And there's 4 guys.
Yeah.
Right.
So we would ask our hosts. Like, that's something that I think is important to put on your host radar, is like, what kind of seating do you have? And we brought picnic blankets.
Yeah.
Whenever the setting was in a grassy area or somewhere where people could sit, we'd put picnic blankets out, and we'd encourage, if we knew that a place wasn't going to have seating, we would send an email out to everybody that had RSVP'd, bought tickets, or if it was a free show, we would tell the host to ask the people that were coming to bring their own seating.
Cool.
Which
Great
helped a
tip.
lot.
Yeah, that's a good call. Seating was pretty important.
Nice.
Yeah.
These kind of shows, I don't think you want people to be there and just like standing awkwardly. Like, at least that's what we decided that we wanted for our style. We wanted it to be like an intimate seated.
Yeah.
Right. It
So
definitely depends on what the music sounds like and what the vibe is. But that is one thing we were pretty set on, is we wanted it to be a seated audience. So yeah, I mean, the best we could do in terms of providing seating was we just made sure we always had a couple picnic blankets. And you're at a seated show, you're always going to have people who want to stand, but it was more of like providing enough seating for people so that like those who didn't want to stand could sit, and then those who wanted to stand would be in the back.
Cool. That's great.
I'm trying to think of some other tips. Okay, one thing, at least one thing we did is we would always play a playlist before. You know, we were the only musical act for most of these shows.
Yeah.
There were some markets where we'd have a really good friend who was doing music, and we'd have them open. But for the most part, we'd make sure that there was a playlist playing music as people were showing up.
Nice.
And as soon as we were done, we'd put the playlist back on. And that actually ended up, like, that strategy ended up actually like revealing itself in terms of how important it was when we didn't do it. And it ended up creating like probably one of the weirder vibes we had on tour, when we totally forgot to put music on, and we kind of like went out and were talking just amongst ourselves, trying to figure out what we wanted to do differently with our set. And when we walked back in, it was just dead silent. It was just people kind of just like fidgeting, sitting there, looking at each other, like no one talking. And we were just like, oh man, we just killed the vibe. Like, this is going to be just a total uphill battle to loosen people back up again. Like, that's when we realized how important it was to have music going. It just like made people way more comfortable with talking and mingling. And yeah, man, that show was tough. That was probably our toughest show to play. We couldn't get anyone to crack a smile after that.
Wow.
It was potent. Like, yeah, my gosh.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Good that you remembered that. Yeah.
Is there anything else?
So you kind of alluded to this, but did each of you have defined roles throughout the tour?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, we're a very collaborative group, so we help out. But yeah, I mean, Teo ran the social media for the most part on the tour. Gustav, who's our like band engineer, audio engineer, he would run the sound check every night and kind of lead. I mean, we would all help set up the audio, but he would lead it. It was kind of, he would do the sound check. Tony and I would like plug the cables in, and then while we were doing that, Teo would set the merch up.
Yeah, we all kind of like fell into roles as the tour established itself. Like,
cool.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where it was, you're totally right. We didn't have set roles going into it, but then after like a week, we just found a flow of things that each one of us.
One role that I started off doing and then was doing it poorly, and thank God Tommy stepped up and saved the day, was sending. I mean, this was honestly one of the logistical things that was the most challenging on tour. I guess this isn't something we even mentioned yet, but we would send out, and this is for ticketed shows mostly, we would send out the address to everyone who had bought it. One of the reasons why Eventbrite was great is everyone who bought a ticket, we'd have their emails. It was a really easy interface to then send emails from the Eventbrite event. But that's something we would have to do 2 days before. Send an email to everyone saying, hey, this is where the show is. This is our seating situation. This is where you can park. This is when we're starting. And this is what to expect. And then we would also send a reminder the day of. And we were a little bit sloppy with, sometimes we wouldn't send the email until, the morning of the show. But that was one of the tougher things to stay on top of. Our internet connection wasn't always great. Sending emails on your phone in the middle of a moving car is painful sometimes.
Yeah.
That is important though, because that's super important to do.
They got to know where to show up.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just right.
It helped us drive ticket sales too, because whenever we had a ticketed show where it wasn't sold out, at the end of the email we would say, "P.S. There's still a few tickets left that we have available. If you know any friends that would be interested, let them know."
Right.
Huge.
That's something
good last minute.
That's something we only figured out until maybe like 10. Yeah, I was gonna say 10 shows left. Is
Huge.
like sticking that little PS.
Right.
I think
that pretty good. We did that in Austin.
Really?
Yeah.
I wish we did that for.
Huge.
That's a good.
Amazing. Cool. Any final thoughts?
Oh man, I feel like it's all just like really starting to come back to me now.
Sure.
We're
right.
really
Right. It's
deep
been
in
some
the
time.
Conversation.
No, it's great. I mean, this is all super helpful, and I know people have been taking notes throughout this conversation, and probably going to. I would encourage everyone to make a checklist, probably like a day of checklist of these things that you guys learned throughout. It's like, oh man, music. Whose job is it to put the music on? Okay,
Right.
we got to cue the music up before we go warm up. We got to do, set the merch up when we get there. Oil changes are going to be this day. Put that, here's the email. Like all the things that you kind of learned throughout. And mind you, even learning this as you went, you had a tremendously successful tour. I'm sure you got a lot of new fans from this thing. Did you notice as you were going through it, like word was spreading and you're getting feedback and you're growing the audience?
Yeah, we definitely would. And the thing I would say about that is, these would be real, these people were real fans. They're, it's not like, it's not like Spotify listeners where you're like, I don't know if this person actually knows who we are. But these people, after, a 2-3 hour night of hanging out, seeing a show, we'd get to talk. The single reason I think we all had so much fun is you play a big venue show and it's loud and it's dark and you don't actually get to really see these people and talk to them and hang out with them. Mm-hmm. At these shows we were playing, there on average be 30 people and we'd get to talk to all of them and hang out with all of them. So yeah, I mean, it was like a slow trickle after every show. There'd definitely be people who would kind of climb on board and follow us on our socials and start listening and start interacting with us.
We had a lot of people in cities that would come to the show and be like, "Oh, my friend saw you, in that."
Yeah,
city,
that was awesome.
Told us to come.
Yeah, that was so cool.
But yeah, like Teo said, I mean, at the end of the day, 45 shows, we probably were played in front of 1,500 people about.
Sure.
And you could play one show if you're opening for a big act. You could play one venue show in front of that many people. But the amount of true fans that we came out of those 1,500, I think the percentage is very high because of the format.
Sure. Yeah, you made a special memory for every person that was there. This is a moment. This is going to be a milestone of their year and maybe even their pandemic 2-year, because it's like you facilitated this magical experience. a lot of non-musicians, non-music people never experience house concerts. That's like in and of itself, pre-pandemic, that was a very special experience. But having the timing of when you guys did this, shortly after people were coming out of quarantine, getting, vaccinated, things were starting to open up and whatever. That even reinforced how special and magical this would be for a lot of people. And this is going to be a life memory for them. And I think, oftentimes we as musicians lose track or just forget how meaningful these experiences are for fans, for the audience, and like the conversations that you had with them one-on-one afterwards, they're going to remember for years to come. And when you go back to that city in a few years and you're playing in front of 1,500 people in a club and they come up to you at the merch table afterwards and be like, I was at that backyard concert and we talked about this and I had my da-da-da, and you'll be like, I don't remember that at all. But they will recite the exact conversation that you had with them because it was like such a special moment for them. So there is definitely something to be said about it's not, we as a society have become so obsessed with the numbers and everything is a number. And, we just see the numbers on the screen, the number, follower numbers, play numbers, view numbers, da-da-da-da-da. That doesn't measure impact. Numbers on the screen on any of these social platforms or streaming services do not measure impact. And so even though you might say like, oh, we only played to 1,500 people, you could have done that, but the impact that you had on these 1,500 people, these are going to be lifers. These are your lifelong fans. When it says it only takes 1,000 true fans, you might have your 1,000 from this first show if you continue to engage them and keep them, going strong after this. So it's a very, we have to put numbers into perspective because not every number is weighted equally. A house concert attendee is weighted very differently from a stream on Spotify that came from a playlist,
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think,
yeah,
I just like that kind of made me think of one more kind of plug for doing this, some kind of house show setup like this. It ended up being, at least personally, and we talked about this, so I think the rest of the guys agree, a lot more sustainable than we thought it would in terms of like daily energy. Like we had this schedule laid out before us and we were like, oh my God, how are we going to do like these 4 shows in a row, and then we have a day off, and then we have another 3 or 4 in a row, and then a day off, and then it seemed crazy. But there's something about these house shows where we'd only play music for about an hour to an hour 15 sometimes. But we weren't like moving around in a club and like screaming and doing that kind of thing. And it almost felt like when we would have a stretch of several off days, we'd be like more exhausted and tired because these nights where we play a show would be so rejuvenating and yeah.
That makes sense. Amazing. Well, we're going to have to call it there. But I have one final question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. What does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
I can go first.
Sure.
Take it away, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, for me, after experiencing really incredible things, for me, I'm being able to, have the freedom and flexibility to make the kind of music that I and we want to make is extremely important. And also just having the ability to do things, to basically create your own like schedule within music. I mean, I'm the kind of person that I like to do a lot of different things. So having music be something that I can pursue really seriously as one of those things is something that's really important to me. Like having the ability to do a tour like this, to go on tour with my friends and build what we've been working on, and have it be sustainable. That is really important, and it was an experience that I'll never forget. I don't necessarily like, for me, that may not be less valuable than like being a festival act. So for me, making in the new music business is like being able to create the kind of art that I want to create, and also be able to, do it in a way that feels good to me. And right now, that's the structure that we just did that tour in is something that I would definitely want to keep doing in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Cool. Teo.
Tommy, I'm right there, man. No, yeah. I mean, I'd say one of the things that felt like our own little slice of making it in the music industry was playing music for a lot of people and then getting back home with like an amount of money sitting in our band bank account and our personals, but really in our band bank account that was an amount that, we could look at and say, oh man, okay, like we could pay to get our songs mixed, like we could get them mastered, we could actually make a couple music videos with this. And
Nice.
like that, yeah, like having it's kind of like, I mean, I think that was it, is having the freedom to make what we want and be able to also collaborate with people, and also, value the work that they bring to the mix. I think that was a special thing. And that's kind of, for me, what I see as making it is being able to make the kind of music that I want to make with the people I'm making it with. And also, yeah, that's it.
Cool. Teo, Tommy, more fatter. Thank you so much. This is great.
Thanks, Ari.
All right, yeah.